Right now.
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 Because it's time to right now.
Right now.
Right.
Right now.
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 Because it's time to right now.
Right now.
Right.
Right now.
Welcome, my friend, to another daily motivation stream. Today is a weekend, and we are going to get some writing in. So we're starting off a little bit earlier today. I'm starting off a little bit earlier in terms of when we are streaming. So we're going to be doing not one, but two writing sprints today. We're going to try to stay consistent and see just what we can get accomplished. By the way, welcome. I'm Kaufman, daily writing streamer. And you know me, on a mission to help you with finishing your book, because with a community, it is made so much easier. All right, so we're going to hop right into it, and we'll chill and we'll catch up on the break. As you can see, I already have my writing software all set, and I'm all ready to go. So I'm going to see if I can finish knocking out this downtime chapter. I'm going to see if I can finish knocking it out. So I'll see what I see. You can come join me, and I'll hop and join you in the chat. All right, well, I'm all ready. Without further ado, whether you're writing, revising, branding, editing, or something in between, come join us because it's time to write now. All right, my friends, that was the first writing sprint. How did that treat you? Hopefully you're able to make a little bit of progress on your end, whether you got in a couple words, a couple ideas, or maybe just a little bit of motivation. I got a lot accomplished, but I wasn't able to focus on the storytelling, getting sidetracked with some admin stuff. But this next one I am going to go all in. So we'll be doing a longer writing sprint on the next one, and I'm hoping that I can push myself to get into it. Hey, what's up, Whites here? Welcome, my friend. Yeah, I'm doing an earlier writing sprint stream because we're doing our critique group right after. So, yeah, and once again, for anybody here in the community, if you're wanting to be involved in the critique group, Critique Right Now, you should join the channel membership. It's only $10 a month. You can pay the one $10 fee and then just bounce. But essentially, this is a really, really cheap experience. Most critique groups of this quality and this nature, with the type of feedback you would normally get, charge way more. Essentially what it is you'll be able to bring an excerpt of your story. You'll have about 20 minutes. You'll be able to read your story aloud to a group, and then you'll get feedback from other writers and myself, and we'll help make your story better. I think this month is our 11th critique group. We have a pretty good turnout every month, and everyone always walks away with really valuable feedback. So we'll be doing that right after the stream for our YouTube channel membership critique tier, but I highly recommend join now. If you do, I will send over the link to you so you can join us after the meeting. All you have to do is click that join now button right below this YouTube video, also linked down in the YouTube description. Hopefully see you all there. But I am super excited because I actually really want to hop into this part of Scarecrow too. I'm just like so busy. I have so much going on. And by the way, everyone who was involved in yesterday's editing stream, thank you. The editing stream yesterday was actually super cool. I had so much fun going through editing, and it looked like it was pretty popular. Everyone was like really down and giving really great edits and feedback and ideas. So I was very excited about it. It sounds like it's a busy day for you, Maggie. You're like, busy day. But at least you're going to be able to get some time to get writing in. That's really good. It sounds like you're getting a good deal of time today, earlier and later, which is awesome. White's here. It's been a busy day. I got 1,200 words in this afternoon. Also came up with an idea for Freaky Friday. Ooh, Freaky Friday. For anyone who doesn't know, our next writing competition, I will be announcing the details and opening up the submission page tomorrow. So you're going to want to make sure that you come join us for our update stream, as it will be a Freaky Friday kickoff. And we'll be opening up submissions so that way you can be involved in the competition and hopefully get your story. And hopefully your story can be a part of the Freaky Friday anthology. So that is next on our agenda. We'll be chatting about that tomorrow. Tomorrow's stream will probably be at probably be at either 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern time, like late-ish afternoon time slot. So, hey, Emily, at least you got a couple words in. You did better than I, my friend. You definitely did a little better than I. So hopefully I'm going to be able to catch up this time. This time I'm like, all right, I got through some of the things that I needed to take care of and much better. So I'm going to be able to hop straight into Scarecrow this time. I was like, because I really need to. Like Kaufman definitely needs to make progress with Scarecrow. That's for sure. I guess I always have to make progress with Scarecrow. Oh man. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out. Hopefully everyone is going to be able to be just as productive with me on this next stretch. I believe in us. I feel like we're going to be able to push a little bit more and make a little bit more progress. I'm feeling pretty good about this. So let's hop back into it. This second sprint is going to be longer. the first one I wasn't able to get that much time to write in. So this next one, we're going to push for a full hour. I'm going to go 60 minutes because I believe we can fly. I believe our characters can fly. Okay, so I'm going to push back into it. This time we're going to make a good push, and I'm just going to stay attentive. So I have the writing software all set up. Come join me. Let's hop into it. And we are all ready to go. So whether you are writing, editing, revising, reviewing, author branding, or something in between, come join us because it's time to write now. All right, and that is a writing sprint. How did you do? Were you able to get any words in that time? Hopefully, we got in a couple ideas where you got in some ideas, some words, or something else altogether. I felt like I was actually pretty productive that time. I think I got the rest of the chapter mapped out. I had to do some adjusting because it was like structurally, I think it was a little too. I think in the original draft, it was a little too lighthearted at that moment. And I think the chapter has to have a little bit of a heavier-ish tone. I feel like I did too much recapping in the original draft. You know that moment where where you bring in other characters, right? You bring in your new characters for later in the story. But they need to get caught up to speed on the journey so far, but you can't just summarize everything, right? Because the reader already knows. The reader already knows everything, but the new characters do not. And I think originally I did a variation of a show and tell in this chapter, and I was just like, it's just unnecessary. So I'm condensing it and then setting the characters' motivations for this next part of the journey. And it's interesting because the first half of the book, when we think about character journeys, the first act of the book is really a solo journey with Scarecrow. And then once we get into the fun and games part of Act 2, it's really Scarecrow, Mr. Crow, and Pebble. And now, as we get into Act 3 of the book, it's a much darker tone. And now we will follow alongside. Originally, I had a couple more characters and I cut them out, but I think I finalized on the four of them. So it's going to be Scarecrow and Pebble, which we're sticking with them. And now we have the new additions of the Grizzly Bear, Gore, and our Lady Skunk, who is a personality within herself. So it's interesting because Act 3 tonal is just darker. So I'm kind of balancing, playing around. There has to be some hope, but I think the balance of where hope is coming from has shifted. Originally, it was always Scarecrow, but I think Scarecrow is losing hope in a world that feels hopeless. So it's very good. I'm very happy with how the story is progressing. Nice. And it sounds like you guys were getting some nice progress on your end to keep, like you look at people's stories on Reddit about how they queried agents for their novels. You don't know whether they've had butterflies in their stomach or is they're confident. I mean, I'm sure anytime a writer queries agents and goes through the querying trenches, there's probably a lot of anxiety and fear, I'm sure. But you know what? We don't let that stop us. We move forward. Otherwise, your book will never get out there. So it's good that you're doing the research and pushing yourself. That's awesome. Nice, White. So you're trimming. Chapter 16 just got to the wolf chase, but they have stopped short of the kill because they were in the domain of the alpha. Big, nasty thornvine wrapped beast covered in bark. Ooh, that actually sounds like a really great moment. Sounds like a really cool chapter, by the way. So it sounds like you're actually making a lot of really good progress. It makes me want to be working on an action sequence again. But I still got a couple more chapters before we return to another action sequence. So all good stuff, my friends. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Sklo, I know you were asking about writing services. For anybody who's wanting help with writing services, whether that's alpha beta reading, editing, or maybe you're just needing help with coaching to figure out how to improve the skills, why am I not writing, things like that. I also do audiobook narration services, the newest one I've launched. If you're wanting to know more about any of them, you can always fill out the form and we can hop onto a free consult. So you can kind of ask questions, better understand my process, and then I can ask you and understand what it is that you need help with within your budget. So I really do try to be affordable, and we could try to see how we can help you out. So I will drop that link, the writing service link in the chat one more time. Writing service sign up. There we go. So just drop that in the chat for anybody who's needing help or wants to learn more. That is all that I got today. Tomorrow will be our update stream for the next huge event we're putting on here in the community, the Freaky Friday Flash Fiction Competition. So make sure to come join us. Submissions open tomorrow. Details start. I will be launching them tomorrow. Hopefully you'll come join us as we enter in to the spooky, supernatural, mysterious season with Freaky Friday. So make sure to come join us on tomorrow's update stream. I'll probably be streaming at probably go 2 Pacific, 5 Eastern. Make sure to come join us. We'll be here and it will be a blast. For those of you joining me over today on our YouTube channel members critique group, we'll be starting in about 10 minutes. So I will see you there. Hopefully y'all can join us. Once again, for anybody who's wanting to hop into our critique group, all you have to do is hit the join button down below the YouTube video. It is a blast. It's our, we meet once a month and everyone always gets great feedback on their storytelling. So that is all that I got for you, my friends. I am super stoked, super excited. I actually want to be working more on Scarecrow, but hopefully I can get in another writing sprint tomorrow. So more writing this week, my friends, more to come. And that's what I got for you, my friends. Thank you all for joining. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. Words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. It's time to write.
Right now.
Sorry.
Right now, not right now, but right now. Read now, right now. Is that right?
Words are wind,